And we're live. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me today with Mindy Price from Inside the Why. Very excited to chat with Mindy. So much energy level, such an energy level. We chatted about 2 weeks ago to catch up and introduce ourselves and meet each other. And thrilled to have this conversation. Mindy's practice or consulting firms around Inside the Why. She's, chief CWO. She does a ton of work in property management and helping people orient themselves into the purpose of what they're doing. Incredible history with fundraising and not-for-profit and other stuff that she does. So much energy chat with you. Definitely a cup filler. Mindy, a little bit about yourself, the problem you solved. We'll kind of dig in. Oh, actually, before we get started, Getting to Hell Yes is about solving and serving, less than pushing and persuading. And we're having conversations over and over with people. This is, I think we're on our 49th show right now, our 48th show. About talking to folks in the sales side of have revenue, have numbers to carry, and are talking about how we help people versus how we sell to people. And the goal is just really trying to open up the conversation, both for people on the buyer side and even on the seller side that are struggling a little bit, to learn a bit how people are buying today. Obviously, any activity you offer up in the comments, we'll bring that up and we'll chat through it. We really appreciate that input. And we'll get going. Mindy, a little bit about yourself, how you got in this role, and what's the problem that you're solving out there with Inside the Why?
Oh, that's so much to unpack. Let's see if I can do it in a clear, concise manner. Mindy Price, Chief Why Officer at Inside the Why, which is actually a fairly new venture for me, going off and being a founder, doing my own entrepreneurial thing that I've wanted to do, Guillermo, since I was in high school. But with a twist, because when I was in high school and when I started going to college, I thought I wanted to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be the next Lisa Miloski, to go ahead and date myself. And I was going to school for radio, TV broadcasting. I had no idea that I was going to find this thing called multifamily, or as I called it back then, you work at an apartment complex? What? We don't say that. So I ended up, getting a job where I worked. I will spare you the crazy, funny details unless we get into them, because we all have an amazing story of how we got into this industry. I never thought I would find such passion. But at 19 years old, Guillermo, when I found out that I was working for at a property, a multi-million-dollar asset, as a part-time leasing person, I was like, oh, hell yes. I was like, I got this. When somebody asked me, what do you do for a living? I was like, well, I help run a multi-million-dollar apartment community. And I was only on site for a really short period of time, Guillermo, because I went through Carol Marple's training class at that little company called Graystar. And when we went around, baby company. When she went around and she asked everybody, what do you want to do now that you know more about the industry? I was like, hey, Carol, no offense. I don't want you to get fired, but I want your job. And there are some folks that know me. They know some of the intricacies of the story, and it's really funny. But within 3 months, I actually moved into the marketing and training department as a 19-year-old at the corporate office, diversity, and be a part of that, and really helping when they started to build out their own assets that they owned versus just fee management, and got to travel all over the country and open up some of those deals. And it was just really neat. And it was at that moment, whenever I got into training, it was less about me, Guillermo, and, clearly I didn't become the next Lisa Miloski. It was about,
you're not done yet.
Yeah. Well, it was about helping others. It was about training them about an industry that provides a home. And what's more personal than a home? They say, there's death, there's divorce, and then there's your home. And what a special industry that we're in. And we get to do that, whether it's maintenance, because to me, they're the backbone of our industry, whether it's the office teams or it's our supplier partners. Like, we can't work without being together. And I was lucky enough to get started and started teaching classes for the Houston Apartment Association. And I got a stage to learn from individuals, but then also teach the, at the time it's called NALP, so National Apartment Leasing Professional. Now it's Certified Leasing Professional, the CALP. And through that, I just knew this was the industry that I wanted to stay in. And fast forward through a couple of amazing companies that I work for on the owner operator side, on the supplier side, becoming, an investor myself in multifamily, I was able to get on the national stage and share many things, whether it's career development, whether it is, being stuck, whether it was about leasing, whether it was about sales, whatever the topic was. When I worked for J. Turner Research, lots of research that we would put out and making it interesting, but it had an impact. And so it went back to what was my true passion? What is my why? And it's helping others. And ultimately that helps myself. It helps my family. And so when it just presented itself, it's like, if I don't do it now, I'm going to look back and wish I had. My husband and I always said that when we retired, we would buy a really cool, rockin' RV and drive it around the country. And then I'd pick up gigs from different apartment associations and, or other companies that I'm helping outside of the industry to play fund money.
Sure.
I was like, well, why not do it now? We're just not buying the RV, Guillermo, because we're investing in the business so that we can build it. And that's why I made it a business, Inside the Why versus Mindy Price Speaking and Consulting, because it's bigger than me. And eventually I want to have other individuals that are experts in areas that I'm not, that can help the clients that we want to serve. And I know that was a lot, but it gets me to where I am today and what we're doing, which is truly helping business owners and individuals who maybe feel like they're stuck. There's something that's holding them back. Maybe they're the problem, and helping them identify that, talking to them in a way that is, strategic, but definitely we're not going to, that we're not going to just handle it with kid gloves and walk on ice, eggshells. If I identify that the problem is actually the person that hired me for a business, we're going to talk about that. We're strategically going to put things together that are going to help push through that. And then, right now I'm writing a digital course on overcoming the fear of public speaking. Guillermo, do you know how many people are held back from promotions because they have a fear of putting themselves out there? Somebody on your team, not hypothetically, there could be somebody that's on your team that won't come and talk to you.
It's terrifying. And I think that we also discipline. My point on that one is it can be terrifying. It can be exhilarating. And I'll look forward to your course because I'm always looking to improve in that space, because I excel in rooms of 3,000 or rooms of 20 or maybe let's say 50, but anywhere in between, it's terrifying.
Yes.
So I a room of 3,000, then I feel it. It's just pumping through my veins. But if all of a sudden I've got this mixed bag of conversations, I can see people's faces and all this stuff, I just get distracted. I don't know how, but I'll tell a funny story later on. But that is so here's actually part of why I'm fully dialed in what you're talking about. Part of what this whole Getting Hell Yes series is about helping people understand how to market themselves and the problems that they solve. Because I put together a pitch. I really wished it was accepted for Apartmentalize about Getting Hell Yes. And again, what I did is I misbranded, I mispresented, I mispositioned it. What I wanted to do, they're like, we're all operators here. And I said to the guy, I said, look, and he was so empathetic about going through and breaking down my pitch. And I said, and I had two presidents on the panel that we were going to go together and talk about. I said, if you want to be a leader, you have to know how to sell, and you have to be able to communicate. And you got to be able to communicate something that's interesting to the person that you're talking to, be it internal or external. And he's like, well, this is what we talk about operations Apartmentalize. I said, if an operator doesn't know how to sell their leadership, they're never going to get budget. They're going to be persistently frustrated, and they're going to be stuck in the operator ceiling, especially in this business. And you want proof of that? Let's look at the career path of a maintenance leader versus the career path of a leasing agent, right? Leasing agents leapfrog over top of the maintenance track, because they're tuned to sell, and they're tuned to communicate, and they're tuned to serve. And so they're tuned to communicate how they serve. I'll put it that way, because maintenance folks serve all day long. But it's just it's that recognition that we've got to be able to share our ideas. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck.
Well, and speaking of maintenance, there is a gentleman, and I cannot believe am I see his face. He used to work for Lincoln, Willowbridge now, but he worked for Lincoln. And he started as a maintenance professional. And he was articulate. He was
Yeah.
creative. He had outside the box ideas. He was a servant leader. He understood customer service. And he was able to voice his thoughts and share in the conversation and move
Mhm.
up, and then moved into leasing, and then moved into management. And I
Yep.
think he's in a marketing type role now, which fits his personality. But you think about those that are able to let go of any fears that they have. I'm stuck. I'm in this position right now, so I can't
Mhm.
add value to the conversation. The other thing that he was able to do, Guillermo, is listen. He would listen, and he spoke up when he should, and he didn't when he shouldn't. So when he did speak, people really paid attention to him. And there are so many maintenance professionals. I say so many. That's actually not exactly correct. But there are a
Mhm.
number of maintenance professionals who have transitioned over onto the sales side, and they've done exceptionally well. And then there's those that's like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I do
Yeah.
very well in my role, and I want
Well,
to stay here.
yep. And there's a very important role for those folks in the interview organization, right? But ultimately, like there's just a truth about scale that when you're an individual contributor, you limit your earning potential. And if you are a scaler, you maximize your earning potential. And that's just a truth about productivity and returns that is okay. Like, for a long time, I got frustrated with folks that were just like, they were like, my career is so important to me. And it makes I define my healthily or not, I define my self-worth based on my career. And my wife and I, like, it's like a persistent, like,
Get it?
that is just like a programming, and I can't unprogram myself about that. And so, like, and that's like, maybe there's a therapist that unpack that someday at some point in time, or a whatever, or a deathbed confession. But like, it's going to be something that I have to live with. And like, so I would always get frustrated with folks that weren't oriented that way, recognizing that they maybe found their cup filled through other service, right, or through volunteering, or through coaching, or through children, or the church, or whatever. And I just didn't have that orientation to understand that. And nonetheless, people don't have to do it all at work. They can do it other places, as long as they're getting their cup filled, right? They're getting success.
Mhm. Yeah.
They find their why, right?
Yeah, you find your why. You can't see it, but it's over here in my office, and there's a plaque that my dad received in 1986,
All
and
right.
then there's a plaque that my mom received in 1978. Okay,
Okay.
and she was the top 5 individual performer on accident and health so she sold insurance. Tough
Yep.
business back then. I
Yep.
have the I have a very ugly china set in my garage. Yes, in my garage, in a beautiful china cabinet that I won't get rid of. My husband thinks it's hilarious that she won all the pieces. Never going to use them, but they're in there. I don't want to let them go.
For work competitions, for like service competitions.
Yes. So then my dad, so thinking about your why, my dad in 1986, he was salesman of the year. And then I
Yeah.
don't have the other plaque to see where it was, but he made the $100,000 club in sales. And back
In
in
the
the
70s.
early
The
80s,
70s.
no, maybe he
Well,
was in the
80s
70s. I don't
nonetheless.
know. My mom was in the 70s on this plaque, but long story short, I can remember him being so proud that he made his first $100,000 in a year, and that's still a lot of money. But back then, that was a lot of money.
You could
And
buy a home for $8,000.
yes,
Yeah.
with obnoxious interest rates, but yes. So
Yeah.
I can remember as I was, and this all has changed as I've gotten older, but I was very driven by how much money I was making. Like, so that's why sales was fantastic for me, because it was like, okay, am I being fulfilled? And so it was a title, and it was how much money was I making? And I love that. It wasn't in a bad way. My husband and I always talk about it. He goes, "You are so fulfilled from work, from these accomplishments." And I am, and I love it because I love helping others. But there
Mhm.
for a while, Guillermo, I also was more selfish. And it was like, just get the sales done, focus on this, and when I shifted that mindset for me, where it was like, am I really happy about the amount of money I'm making, or am I happy that I'm making a difference? And what's great is when I realized that I was happy I was making a difference, I started making even more money.
I completely agree with you. And it's something interesting that there's a bunch of different concepts out there, like the Ikagi concept, like the Japanese do it. It's like this 4 circles. I consolidate to 3 because I'm partially a narcissist, but it's like basically that, things that people will pay you to do, things that you're good at, and things that you like to do. There's a 4th circle formally that's for like, a vocation, like, so things that you give the world for, but I'm on 0 on that. So I don't even think about it. But so like, I think of those 3 things, and it's like, yeah, like I love to ski, but no one will pay me to do it. So that's like just fun, right? I can't get paid to do that. There's certain things that I like to do that I'm probably some of the best in the world at, but I don't like doing it anymore. So it doesn't make me happy. And so there was a period in my life where I was getting paid really, really a lot of money. And, but I was really unhappy. And what's interesting about that, when you take a look back and stand back, is that the consequences of being unhappy are irrespective of how much money you make, because like you cannot outspend your unhappiness. And so you end up devolving yourself into like trying to fill a gap or a hole in your why with things that are like useless. And it could be material stuff, it could be whatever, good times, all whatever. But it's like, that doesn't help you. That's not how I'm wired. And it took me a while and a very patient spouse to figure that out,
Yeah.
And it's remarkable because like, I don't think that I figured out my why yet, but I'm closer to it. And, we're at a stage of our life where we're trying to figure out what we want to do for retirement. And like, at least imagine it because it's closer. Our youngest is 16. So eventually it's gonna be an empty house. And we're going to look at each other and go, okay, what do you want to do? And like that conversation, that why has to be centric to that being successful, but the why has to be mutually held versus independently held. And right now it's kind of independently held because we still got lots of stuff going on, right? But eventually it's just going to be the 2 of us. And so the work why, the happiness why, the people why, all those things got to converge together.
Yeah.
And we're still unpacking that.
Yeah. So you said you're 16-year-old. So my youngest is 17, and he literally just walked in, and I put my finger up. You couldn't see it. And I heard him go, why? I tried not to crack a smile. But that was another thing too. And thinking about what is my driver? And I've got 6 months left at home with him before, this is, a few months ago, before he graduates. And starting your own company and going from a very nice high base salary and package and huge corner office and all those things, and then saying, hey, babe, to my husband, I'm going to start my own company, which means we're not going to have anything coming in until I start billing. And it's so scary.
Yeah.
But
thrilling.
Just knowing this is my passion. This is where I'm going. I got my first check in the mail this week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I want to frame it. I mean, I need to deposit it, but I want to frame it.
Sure. Don't be Ricky Henderson. Deposit.
But the one thing that you said a lot of great things, Guillermo, but what I love that you said is being on the same page with your spouse.
Yeah.
Because when you can come in alignment with investments, with career, with your family and your parenting, and it doesn't mean you always agree, but you can hear each other out. You can get to the outcome that makes sense for the 2 of you, and even for yourself when you have that support. And so I think you are
like acknowledging that like 2/3 of marital discussions are unresolvable. So like think about that. And that's in the happiest of happy couples. And so if you go with that data point and go, well, then if I'm spending all my energy on trying to convince the other person to solve 2/3 of the problems out there, let's waste time. Let's find the 1/3 of things that we love together and build a life on that. And that will overcome the 2/3 of things that really are irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. And so it's trying to figure out what are deal breakers and what are deal makers, I guess is the other opposite of that. And the deal makers is where happiness comes from. And so and again, I'm still I'm at that age where I'm getting a little bit deeper into myself. I'm trying to figure out, I can't blame my parents anymore. I can't blame my upbringing. A lot of it, I said to Allison, like my wife, I'm like you understand that like this complicated mess of burning embers, you had more to do with this than my parents did.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
And so we laugh, and she's awesome. So it's pretty funny, but like we have those, it's that acknowledgement. And so you and I, obviously we're off track here, but like, what's the problem you solve for property management? I'm gonna close my door.
So when I think of property management, when I think of individuals, so there's a lot of different ways to look at it. For companies, going in, and if they have hit a wall and they can't seem to get past it, if they're struggling with technology and AI and worried about centralization, it's really figuring out, well, what is holding them back? Why are they afraid to do it? Why did they try something? Why did they fail? If employee retention and turnover is super high, it's digging in and figuring out why. And is it an overall culture problem, or is it an individual leadership problem that needs to be addressed? And then for individuals, Guillermo, there are folks that have reached out to me. They want to become speakers. And so they want to be coached on speaking, or they want to grow in their careers, and they just want to have a plan and somebody to hold them accountable. Well, first off, let's figure out why you need somebody to hold you accountable, and let's build a plan around that. But it's really all about digging in and overcoming any of the fears that you have, and then putting a plan in place to make sure you're not just doing something to scratch the surface. Because you can go to, let's say, if I didn't offer consulting and it was just a keynote or motivational session or career development, or, whatever it is that I was presenting, we go to these seminars, we go to conferences all the time, and we get these nuggets of information. You're like, that's great, I'm going to go and implement it. And companies are paying so much money for suppliers to be there. I highly encourage suppliers. So I think, I'm the chair of the National Suppliers Council for 2025. And I highly encourage suppliers to upgrade their conference pass to full conference so they can go to the education sessions. Then of course the owner operators don't want to send their team members to these educational conferences if it's just going to be a big boondoggle, a big party. And NAA puts so much emphasis on the education. You talked about wanting to get picked. You're going to revamp your session. You're going to pitch it next year. When there's good quality education, that's great. But Guillermo, what do they do with it afterwards?
Yeah.
Like, are they actually implementing it? We get stuck in that rut. We go back to the bad habits. And so my stuff is more about, why are you doing that? Let's actually put some KPIs. Let's put some measurables together so that we can have the feedback loops, and we can make sure you are accomplishing what you want to accomplish. You just spent a lot of money for me to come in and, motivate your teams, or to go to an NAA, or to go to whatever conference. What did the teams come back with? And then let's hold them accountable for that. And then once they have those moments of, oh, wow, I'm actually implementing this, where they go and where they are 6 months and a year from now, it's just absolutely incredible.
So so as a buyer for a why problem, and my experience here is for a hot minute, I had a culture application, culture app that I was building. And I was coming from a bad culture. So I was like, really passionate about solving the problem, because it was like, maybe this is like a therapy way for me to solve my own stuff. But for a hot minute, I found this culture application, and went at it to go to market. And and I'm not saying why is culture, but I'll get to the connection in a second here. I found that it was really difficult to sell solutions for problems that executives didn't want to acknowledge existed. As an example, like negative language versus positive language, or micromanaging managers, or just negative pyramids within your pyramid, right, of people, toxic environments, not knowing the why. Like, when you don't know the why, and I'm not saying we figured it out, right, but like, you create a lot of overhead, right, and controls to make sure people aren't doing things they should be doing, right? You're kind of managing with a stick instead of the honey. And so for an executive to acknowledge I need to buy a problem for that, that's a hard look. And so like how do you find that customer? This gets the hell yes buyer, right? How do you find that buyer, or how are you going to find that buyer that's seeking to acknowledge that they're stuck? Because they're stuck on you're stuck on the P&L, right? Or maybe you're stuck in Google reviews, but you're not stuck on the why. It's not an immediate connection. Geez, if I just put more marketing into it, I just put more leasing agents, or I just staff it more media, more maintenance people, those are easier levers to pull than saying that as a leader, I'm missing the target.
Yeah.
Right. I'm uninspiring my people. And you know, like I'm in the process right now of revitalizing our vision. Like we call it the VTO. I still have from the EOS kind of like playbook, but our vision traction document, because like I haven't really clearly articulated our vision or my vision to the people. And a part of it is because maybe I'm insecure that I don't know what that vision looks like. Right. And so being unable to articulate, like I've got an idea of what it is, but like putting it on paper and telling other people and having the conviction around it can be scary for a leader. And there's a lot of leaders that don't know their why.
Yeah.
And they convey it through kind of conventional management practices versus kind of like how humans operate.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing, so there's a lot to unpack.
Here we go. Therapy session. This is free.
So you mentioned EOS, so Entrepreneurial Operating System, for anybody that doesn't know what that is. And in the very first meeting that you have with EOS, you're supposed to have all of your strategic leaders in that meeting with you to go through that vision. So it's not just you coming up with it, and you have to be raw, and you have to, say, I don't know for sure. I think this is where we're at. And when you can be truly authentic, and as leaders, we want to have every answer. We want to come across and feel like when somebody comes to us, we're like, here's the answer. I know this is what you're looking for. Now go forth and do this. And there's some insecurities that someone could have if they don't have that. Am I going to lose respect? Are people going to think that, I don't know what I'm doing? Am I really dealing with imposter syndrome? And now somebody just called me out. Yeah. And the thing is if you're able to show that vulnerability, Guillermo, or any leader can show that vulnerability and ask for help and be a good listener for what people really want. And then as a good leader, you don't act on it right there and then. You sleep on it. You come back, because initially the way you feel isn't necessarily the right answer. It's a gut instinct. And sometimes you've been living in fight or flight, fake it till you make it, just chaos. You make the wrong decisions. And so that goes into, how do I find my clients? And right now what I'm doing is I'm talking to a lot of different leaders on the owner operator side that have been great friends of mine that will hit me hard between the eyes. I have paid money to coaches because I think it's important to invest in myself.
Yeah.
But then talking to supplier partners too, and asking them, what are they struggling with? Why are they struggling with it? And asking those harder questions. And so I'm putting together marketing material to then use that in my social media posts that I have yet to start doing, to use that. So it is a tiny bit premature because I'm saying things as I want, but hey, let's have a date a year from now and let's see, or 6 months from now and see what I'm really doing. But I feel like, using stats, using real life examples of where people are struggling, and then not being afraid to put it out there and have those tough conversations, and the positive conversations is what is going to help me get those clients that I want and that are willing to put in the work, Guillermo. I'm not going to work with somebody that's going to be very superficial. It's all talk. It's like, no, you've got to put in the work. If you are here and you want to be here, then there's going to be things that we've got to do together, and there's things you've got to do on your own. So again, this goes to a business leader who is not wanting to admit that they have a problem or their entire team has a problem. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to let go of everybody. It's just like what's Jim Collins' good to great.
Pretty
Maybe
great.
you just have people in the wrong seats on the bus
Bus.
and they
Yeah.
need certain training. So
I do. I also borrow from the EOS system that get it, want it capacity, right? Like the staff, the people assessment tool, where it's like, straight up binary. Do they get it? Do they want it? And then capacity you can work on. The capacity to solve the problem. And so like I like to think things that way. And I'm a bad hirer because I cheer for people. And so like I really want them to be successful even in the interview. Like I'll give the answers in the interview. So I found we actually have adapted Iris to do interviews because I'm that bad. And so we actually use the product of the interview so I can be objective about what I hear versus me doing it myself, because I enjoy conversation and I want people to be happy and I'm a pleaser. And so I pull that back. I'm curious though, like, we're going to be dropping, I feel like we're dropping all these little books all over the place, but like when I think of like the why to me feels like this goes back to Covey, like Q1 and Q2 problems, right? So Q1 for enlisting in the Covey kind of like square, I don't have it handy, is like urgent and important. And that's what we love to work on every day. And I'm guilty of it all the time, right? I want to respond to LinkedIn DM. I want to do all this stuff because it's urgent and important. And it's like, it flips that dopamine trigger, makes you feel good. That stuff's kind of like, now it's lower priced, but easier to buy at all levels, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, if I heard incorrectly, but like the stuff that you sell is the not urgent but very important stuff, like the multipliers. Like you don't get multiply. I don't multiply my company when I respond to a DM. I kind of like make myself feel good. But the stuff that you do multiplies a company, and multiplier stuff is hard to buy, and kind of like icky because you got to realize as a leader, I'm not doing something right, or at some point in time something's not working. Because as a leader, your job is to kind of make sure it works, and then hire the people that can be successful, whatever the saying you want to use, right? So then, and the other thing is that things that are not urgent but multiplyingly important that way, they often don't fall themselves on a predetermined budget, like this. Often not budget, but it's got to be discretionary. It's often something I don't need to do this quarter, but if I don't do it this year, I might be fired. Like that, it falls in that weird spot, and it's kind of like it's in their stomach. So how do you find those people?
Yeah. Was it our conversation? I've had so many amazing conversations. I feel like it was you, and we've heard others say this, Guillermo.
Yeah.
And I think it was you. I think I was walking around my house while we were talking, maybe, I don't know, or somebody, but like, if you, what is it where so you think about discretionary budget, you think about hiring. So if you need to spend the money to train somebody and they leave, right, you're out that money. But if you don't train them and they stay, so that's where it goes to that. The other thing that you said that made me think about it, and I looked over and I do have my fun little basket of props because I had a different fun call earlier, but I have this little frog right here.
Right.
It'd be fun.
Looks good. All right.
But what this little guy does, is he reminds me of something that Brian Tracy said, and the whole concept, and there's a book, and this is sometimes really hard when you think about this budgeting. This is from my perspective, but you're like, Mindy, why did you just bring a frog? Is what's the worst thing that can happen if you go ahead and tackle the worst task? So eating the frog, eat that, what you hate worst, eat it first. And sometimes it's breaking your budget for things that will actually multiply and matter. Sometimes it's like you continue to put this off, but it would have an astronomical impact in your success if you would just get rid of that frog first. And I have team members that I've been lucky enough to have on my team in the past where we constantly talked about what is your frog you're going to tackle today. And they'll send me the most fun little memes. Even all these years later, I'll get these random frogs and I know they ate something that was holding them back. And then I'll follow up with them and I'll say, well, how did that help you? What were you able to accomplish after doing that? And so there's so many layers to that onion, Guillermo, but it's like literally eat that frog, get it in the budget, because it could be a lot worse if you don't.
Do you find that like folks that like are like they activate that discretionary budget? At that point, you're competing with another pre-budgeted, because we're in a zero budget era, right? You're competing with something else. So now you've got to take away budget from something else. So and I'm acknowledging that what you're doing is like hard to do, right? And I think it's reserved for very few people to be successful at this. And granted, your background in the supplier network, your background in speaking, like you're kind of built for it, and not a lot of everybody is. So like, how do you go and relieve that? Here's an example, a better example. I was talking to folks. I think it was going to do some coaching work, and I was talking to a guy who was like talking about culture problems, and he was talking about culture and alignment solutions for startup companies. I said, look, you're selling the wrong thing. He said, what do you mean you're selling the wrong thing? I said, you're telling me that, lack of alignment is costing me this many hours of this many hours of that. And I'm like, that's not the problem I care about. I really don't. Like, I acknowledge that, but it's not something. I also have a dirty workbench that's been dirty for 8 years. I'm not solving that right now. It's not my priority. Because what's your priority? I said, look, as a startup CEO, I care about burn, cash flow, runway, and like time on earth, right? And if you don't solve that, you're distracting me. So what your pitch should be is, what's your burn? What's your runway? Do you want to stop wasting time and solve problems? Because every single month I'm burning, right? And so if I'm burning and I'm not getting closer to the finish, the targeted objective, then I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. And so I never hired this company, but just the conversation around like solve the problem that the person with the authority to make the decision for what you sell and the problem that they're looking to solve has to be aligned. And so like presuming you're talking at the VP level and up, those leaders have discretionary budget because they can kind of like just like pull it from somewhere, right? We're not going to the conference. Now I got the money to pay for it. But they want to buy something, right? So like I find that like the retainer deal, and this goes back to like, sorry, for everyone listening, you might recall that I was in consulting for 25 years. So selling the snake oil, but like they don't want to buy, what we used to sell, and I'll tell you what actually accelerated our practice measurably was we were really good at what we did. We were probably best in North America, at least, at what we did. And we grew really fast. And, we were known for being able to deliver supply for this particular problem in the industry. It was asset management and implementing SAP. And, but we didn't really multiply our business until we gave them something to buy, meaning that we didn't have a methodology in place. We just kind of like, we're going to fill the gaps. We're going to take the spots. And then eventually for us to really win work and create a multiplier for the business that we ultimately sold, we had to put together a methodology and have those like, it starts with 4 chevrons on top and then whatever that's going to be. But this is what you're buying now, right? Because to your point earlier, it's all great to get inspired, but if you don't have an implementation plan, you're just kind of like, what's it called? Inspiration without perspiration, or inspiration without strategy is just perspiration. I can't remember what it is, but it's like, you're just getting excited and then going back to work.
Yep.
And that's not the point.
And you have to have measurables. It's not just implementation. You have to have the measurables.
Yeah. And so how do you go out to give the things that you solve are multipliers, but could be slow moving, right? Let's call it NOI or asset value if you're talking owners. Like, how do you start connecting the dots to the work that you did, the before, the work that you did, and then the after, so that you can kind of write your case study?
Yeah. So still working on that, right?
Yep.
Still, it's super new, but all the questions, all the things that you're saying are incredibly valuable to anybody that's listening and thinking about, I'll go back to, so how do you measure that and how am I putting that together? One of the things that you said is you said, startup, you were looking for burn and runway. And I have learned, School of Hard Knocks too, that there are individuals that are out there that aren't focused on that. And then when you go back and you look at their burn and why they're not successful, you literally can pinpoint exactly where they started to make those wrong decisions. And then they just kept following them because they weren't paying attention to them. And ultimately, it can be to your demise, to the company's demise, to the position that you're in. And so for me, Guillermo, it's really about understanding whatever that need is. And I may not have an answer to it, but there's a lot of things when you ask the question, but why? So if I was trying to pitch something to you and you're giving me excuses or you're saying what your problem is, I'm going to continue to listen. I'm going to say why. And we're going to continue adding and taking away layers of that onion. I love to use that analogy until we really get to the core of it. And then we're going to put together, based on your why answers that you think are your why right now, we're going to put together a plan, an implementation timeline, and we're going to put together some measurables on a time frame that makes sense, that we agree upon, to go back and to check in to see where we're at. And we're not going to come up with, we're going to have to be realistic with what the goals are. Can it actually be measured? Or is it something that's less tangible and it's more of a soft skill that people are struggling with? So there's a lot that goes into putting a custom plan together for an individual or for a company that is struggling. So I still am new to doing it as an entrepreneur versus going in and running a company or being in a leadership role that I've been in before. But what I've always done is lead with authenticity, have tough conversations that need to be had, but in a caring way so that you can accomplish whatever that goal is. And if you don't accomplish it, why? And if it's a me problem, because I gave wrong direction, we're going to self-correct and we're going to figure that out. But it really starts with, from the very beginning, digging in deep. And what is it that you want to do? You know, if a particular portfolio is struggling, well, Guillermo, there's a lot of factors that can go into that. Is it the asset? Is it the ownership if it's third party? Or is it the asset manager, even if it's owned? Is it the team that you have in place? Is it, you know, potentially the person that hired me, and I come in and I'm like, oh, you know what? All the other regionals that I've met with or VPs, they're doing X, Y, and Z. This is the outlier. Is that the problem? Let's dig in and let's figure out why. So it's broad. And one of the things that I also know in order to be successful is to really fine tune it. And as I'm having these detailed conversations with those individuals that I respect, and like I said, they'll hit me between the eyes if they're like, no, or something I don't know about, I'll be refining that and figuring it out and utilizing them too to help me make sure that we're down the right path without giving confidential information away for the client.
Of course. I mean, I think what's interesting about that is, like, you take a look at the implementation plan and the conversations and the discussion. And, like, I mean, the tough part is that, well, at least, you know, if I was a buyer, is that the why is going to be articulated in financial terms, which is kind of like almost universal. But the why it's not working is all the independent variables, right? One thing that I see in markets where, this concept of price makers and price takers. So in price taking markets, you typically compete on on customer experience, or you compete on, this is where you win on customer experience, or you win on product innovation. That's a price making market. In a price taking market, you have externalities that you respond to, and you typically compete on operational excellence. Kind of like, you just got to do it better. Price makers, Apple, Lexus, Mercedes, price makers. I mean, Toyota, I would be a price maker-ish, Walmart, etc. We kind of familiar with those brands. Multifamily or property management is, you know, mostly price takers, especially when you get into high-rise, kind of like urban. It's very difficult to really differentiate one from the other. And in price making businesses, there's a lot of blame that goes on to other things. And then throw on that you've got an ownership level, you've got a management level, and you've got a resident, and you've got staff, all these competing stakeholders in a single kind of profit center. And what happens, or what I've seen, is that there's a lot of lack of accountability, like kind of like, but indirectly, like everyone is indirectly accountable for success, and very few people are directly accountable for success. And so what happens is that people kind of say, not my job in price making environments. So how do you rally around? That was a long way to get to. How do you rally around in a not my job? That's kind of like the structure of the business. Or do you see the same thing, like a not my job kind of industry, that this no, this is your job? Like you spoke to the founder at Graystar, right? I mean, she's like, no, she was like, give me the job. She was taking the job from other people because she knew how she was compelled to make it amazing. And obviously look where we're at. But like that world, that's something that we need so dearly, but it's like everyone just blames other people. And I mean, I
don't think it's acceptable, Guillermo.
No, it's like, it's not,
I want to, maybe I have too much faith in our industry.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. Or maybe it's just because I'm old school. And, I joke around in 96 when I started in the industry. I said, I started when I was 2. If you did the math from earlier, no. But no, like that is absolute. If you feel that way, get out. Like,
they're allowed to exist.
But they shouldn't. So that goes back to a leadership problem. Yep. If your teams are saying that's not my job, I still to this day, when I go visit my kiddo at A&M, and whenever he lives in a house now, but we lived at an apartment community, student housing, and I'm walking and I see trash. Who's picking up the trash? That's certainly not my job as a parent that is paying money there. But in the industry, it's what I do. When I was on site and I would see that somebody needs help, you figure out how you can help them. Wendy Ray Walker and I did a thing for the Texas Apartment Association a few years ago. And she gave a great example of being an executive at one of her companies. And she went in on site and she could tell everybody was trying very hard, but the phones were ringing. It was a little bit chaotic. She just rolled up her sleeves, sat down, started answering the phones, didn't ask any questions, took people on tours. That's what you do. You lead by example. And here's the thing. If somebody is not in what they would think of as a leadership role, Guillermo, they are completely wrong. Any position that they're in, they are independently a leader. Yeah. And so if they lead by example, by rolling up their sleeves, doing whatever it takes, and that's not a pie in the sky thing. That's legit. And I do understand that if you're a part-time leasing person, you're not going to be able to walk in and, fill in for that assistant or that bookkeeper because you don't know the software, but you can certainly ask to be trained. You can certainly ask how to take something off the plate of the porter that is super busy in maintenance, and the lead maintenance has a little bit of extra time if, that in fact is happening at the property, and they can help that porter with whatever's happening, that make ready. So to me, it's all levels. Every single level, it should not be, it's a not my job mentality, because if it is, your company's the problem, your culture's the problem.
So how do you, with that, when people recognize that that's the issue and they go to try and find solutions, what are they typing into Google? Like, what are they searching for? How do they find Mindy?
Oh, well, yeah. If they're looking to, find me, well, first, I'd probably need to get my Google listing up.
Well, but even before they find you, right? In the language of the customer, is seeking to solve problems. The buyer is seeking to solve problems. So they've got a buyer, and they're going to go, forget it. I'm done with this way. I've lost patience with the way that we're operating today. We've got to change. I'm typing something into a search.
Help me with culture and accountability. Go to AI. Help me with culture and accountability. You're putting in, I'm feeling like my company is going down a path where our culture is suffering, and the mentality is, that's not my job. Give me 5 things that I can do to improve this. AI is a great friend. Now, it's not going to take my job. It's not going to take your job, because there's still that human connection that is needed.
Like I give away all the ideas I have in the world because I'm not afraid of anybody trying to implement it.
Yes.
That's the tough part. And I'll even tell you how to implement it. But doing the work, that's the hard part.
Yes. And, I don't see, let's say you did the exact same thing that I do. And there's a number of amazing speakers and consultants in and outside of our industry. And I saw very early on, I was able to be a speaker probably 13 years ago at the NAAEI. I'm NAAEI faculty, but it was the NAAEI meetings that they were having for the association executives, where all of the AEs come together, and then they will get to see different speakers from across the country and decide do they want to hire them. And many, many years ago. And I saw it firsthand how unfortunate it was that they looked at each other as competition instead of helping each other. I think a lot has changed. I know that COVID changed a lot of things, Guillermo, and student housing really led the industry for sharing best practices and just being an open book for what they were doing to help the industry. And so I have always said, my competitor is not my, I don't look at individuals as competitors. I look at them as opportunities to help them. Yeah. And, hopefully it's going to come full circle. So I just think that when you can be more transparent with the things that you see, going back to this culture isn't there. And I'm just not going to accept it, Guillermo. It's not my job, but I know it's out there.
I had a great one. I was listening to a book for the day, and the guy quoted it, he punched it. He's like, if you refuse accountability, you're refusing to grow up.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Yes.
People I gotta send that to.
Yes. I have to be careful sometimes because I don't want somebody to get upset with me. I'm like, you seem miserable. Why? Quit. Go do something else. Like, but I'm like, no, Mindy, reframe it. Let's really dig into that. Like, if you're that miserable, if you're not listening, if you won't take a hard look in the mirror, go take a hard look in the mirror. Is the problem you? Is it? Let's dig into that.
So given that, like, we're trying to solve, like, the people are stuck and they're trying to solve a stuck problem. What things have they usually tried before they go, I need help. I need external help.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks, they'll look up a time management class, or they will maybe look into some presentation skills, some sessions that they can do. They'll talk to a friend. If they continue to be stuck, though, Guillermo, the thing is that they literally are only scratching the surface. They're not actually putting in the hard work and really looking in the mirror and recognizing, okay, this isn't an easy fix. Can I be taught to do things a different way? Yes. Do I want to put in the hard work to adapt this? And I don't know what the new number is. I've heard different numbers, but I was always taught that it takes 21 days to get a habit, right? Sure. If you make your bed for 21 days, then you're going to make your bed for 21 days. That didn't work with me, by the way. But, and I was like, really? It doesn't bother me that much. But, if you're going to put in the work and you're going to practice, you can change your mindset. You can have that shift that actually happens. And then you can have that clarity. But what's that driving force? Why are you miserable? Why are you happy? Why are you being held back? And then let's dig into that and let's put things in place that will help you overcome whatever that is.
I love it.
You got to do the work.
Well, and then it's about doing the work, right? I mean, the commitment to change, like I talk all the time. I say selling is seeking people who are committing to change, and then exchanging a fair price. And I use that language all the time. I'm in the middle of writing an article right now that is, when I first started writing it, it was like it kind of had a really bad bias to it. And I was like, no, it's okay to make money. It's totally fair to make money. And you exchange a fair price for a fair problem. That's like legit, right? And so luckily it's some of those contexts is like, it's fair. It's making money is fair. It's okay. It's charging an unfair price.
Solving a problem, if you look at it that way. So it is fair, but you have to listen to what the problem is.
And the urgency and who's the buyer and all those things, and filter it all down so you can talk to them. Okay, I'm gonna ask for 2 questions. I usually
Okay.
ask 1.
Okay.
So for those that are looking to become speakers, do you have that, or that want to speak or been assigned to speak a speech? Can you give them 3 tips or 2 tips
Ooh.
to help
Ooh.
organize their thoughts?
Yeah. So we're gonna make this very specific to our industry.
Do
Okay.
it.
Because there's a lot of things for people who want to become a speaker. There's a subject that you're good at.
Mhm,
If you are a supplier partner, you have to look at it as an educator because you can't
mhm.
sell your product.
Yep.
If you are an owner operator, what is it that you excel at? And you
Mhm,
know, if others could adopt what that
mhm,
is and use it in business, it would help them. Then you can put your class around that.
mhm,
Now, for my supplier partners, anytime you are submitting, especially as a new supplier that is not known as a national speaker,
mhm.
you typically are going to need, and especially for NAA, you've got to put an owner operator
Us
on
too.
with you. You cannot do it on your own. NAA will just, I remember
Yeah.
going through 119 submissions, and that was just a fraction of them. And if there wasn't an owner operator, unfortunately, we had to disqualify that
Mhm,
one. But it's, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? That if somebody else would take that and
mhm,
implement it into their job, they would be successful. You've got something that you can speak on. And when you get selected or you want to do your pitch, practice a minimum of 10 times. Record yourself, watch it, have it on audio, listen to it, do it in front of the mirror. You're going to hate it. Keep refining it. Listen to it when you're driving. It will help you. That was
Awesome.
maybe more
Okay.
than 2 tips, but
Perfect. That's great. That's great. So I hope everyone caught that. We'll summarize that in the show notes. Um, and then people who are looking to buy it, hell yes. You've been in the marketing side, you've grown up in this industry. If you're bringing on the next person you hire, or someone's asking you, how do I, how am I selling is hard, right? And they're telling you Mindy, selling is hard. What can I do to make it easier? How can I get to hell yes? What's one piece of advice you tell them?
it's 2 pieces because it's really
Okay.
important.
Can you take 3?
First, you have to love what you're selling. You have to love your
Yeah.
product. If
Well,
you
that's
believe in your product, then you have to listen to the customer and understand how it fills that void that they may not even know they have, but your product they need. When you can listen and you can then tell them how that product is going to give them X, Y, or Z, and
Mhm.
maybe A, B, and C, that's when you get them to a hell yes.
I love it. I love it. Unblock them achieving their goals.
Yes. And
Love it.
follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. If you are terrible at follow up, get out of sales.
It is a relentless pursuit. I would agree with you there. And you can't forget about people because they could be just doing something else. What conference you got next? I got to think you got something up your sleeve.
Um, you know what? I am my next big adventure is in Puerto Rico. I'm so excited about going there, but it's not for work. It's actually, and then
Yeah.
I'm back to focusing. But the next thing you'll see me at will be Apartmentalize. So yeah,
Okay.
between now
All
and
right.
then.
I'm still on the fence on that one, but I might see you there. What was I say here? Who should we talk to next?
Oh, there's a lot of great people, but I just had a conversation. She has her own podcast, Lacey Daniels.
Right?
It's multifamily something. I met Lacey years ago when she was, I believe, training director, and then she moved up with Day Rise. She was one of my clients, and I just saw her and thought, oh my gosh, this girl is someone I want to introduce to people. And I introduced her to Val in Dallas, and Lacey just took off with that and started, speaking and got super involved. And now she's doing her own thing and she has her own podcast. And I called her the other day for some advice. You talk to people that you trust. And so she's top of mind. She has her own podcast. I think she's part of the Multifamily Network.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know those
And
folks.
yeah. And so I think she'd be a great guest.
All right. Well, I'll check on her, and I'll drop your name when I chat with her. How can people get a hold of you?
You can reach me very easily. Connect with me on LinkedIn. So here, if we're not connected,
Yeah.
please connect with me on LinkedIn. My email is Mindy, MINDY, at insidethewhy.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for your energy level. Like I'm just like bursting right now. Thank you.
I hear we're writing a book. That's what I got out of this.
Yeah, I think we are. We're gonna co-author something. There's something definitely we can write about. There's no doubt about that. I'll take that away. I've been doing a lot of co-authoring lately, and I love it.
Yeah, and your follow-up spot on, by the way.
Oh,
I did notice that about you. Very good.
That. I've got help. I've got help. I'm lucky about that. Let's see. Everyone listening on if you don't listen to a podcast, you're listening to Sketch with LinkedIn Live. We do a podcast that comes out. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. It's called Getting to Hell Yes. I can't believe I'm the only one in the world that has that. Maybe because I don't know, but I'm the only one that says Getting to Hell Yes. And so we're talking about it in property management. So please follow, comment, do the things you got to do. It helps out tremendously. This LinkedIn Live will be live. Comment there. We'll follow up on it. We both get notifications on that. And engage. Find your why. And here's one thing that my kind of like lesson from today. When you're operating with your why, it's just easier. It's less work. And I use this expression when I was chatting to Ray Hepson from Property Mill. And I use this expression to coach myself when I was in a really tough spot in my career, is that there's no planet when a dolphin wins a tree climbing competition. I know that sounds so silly, but know your strengths and align towards them, because that will make it easier. That will solve your why, help you solve your why. And to your point, if you're not willing to kind of pick up the trash and pitch in, then get out of this business, because it's eventually going to make you unhappy, because you're spending a ton of energy to do things that you don't want to do or you're not good at. And so maybe I took a little bit of liberty what you had to share, but like making it easy for people makes it easy for you. Doing things that are easy are oriented around your why. Like whether you read Daniel Pink, whether you read Bob Berg and Go Giver, like it just makes it easy to serve other people. And so I really value what you shared today, because it helped me, because sometimes you get off track. Kind of a crazy week last week. And I just appreciate what you shared today, because it was good coaching for me to take away. So thank you for this conversation. Certainly helped fill my cup up today. And I hope everyone listening got their cup up filled up too, because Mindy Price, you are a cup filler by definition.
Thank you. Mad respect for you too, my friend.
All right. Well, I look forward to chatting with you some more. And thanks everyone for listening today. I hope you got your fill. This has been outstanding. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Yeah, that was awesome.